This is a post-Christian podcast.
Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Good morning. Welcome to Caleb's house, otherwise known as Revolution Bunker. Got Caleb over here. He's a little under the weather today. He'd appreciate your thoughts and prayers if you pray. I know that there is one thing on everybody's mind right now, and I was thinking about how do we talk about it. You know, I mean, going back into space is a big deal. Okay, that was a joke. That was a bad joke. No. Seriously, folks. Yeah, it is. Hey, my nephew James is online today. That's cool. If you see James Chapman in the chat, that's my nephew. So yeah, it's been really insane here. Yeah, it was definitely a dad joke. I'm a dad, I'm allowed, right? That's the great thing about being a dad is you get able to do really dumb license to do dumb jokes. I should have known when I tried it on Pete this morning and it just fell flat not to do it. But what do you do in times like this, man? Yeah, it is. It's been, how do you speak about today? How do I speak to you today? I am literally in the middle of the social unrest and what some, rioting and looting. Yes, but also the horrific murder of George Floyd. And I think a lot of us have just even forgot that we're in the middle of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. I've honestly been around more people in the past few days than I have in 3 months. Still trying to wear my mask and social distance and things like that. My neighborhood has gone through a lot of the unrest, a lot of the rioting happened right where I live. I had to take my kids to their mom's house just because I wanted to keep them safe, not knowing what would happen. The liquor store on the corner right where I live is gone. Today I was talking to Caleb because he's been taking kind of a little social media sabbatical and just naming all the places that are gone is it's a lot to take in, but it's still, was it Monday when we saw the video of George Floyd?
I think it was Monday.
I can't even keep track of the days anymore. Seeing that video pretty much right when it was released, shocked me like it shocked all of America, and we're all responding really, and I think out of the depths of our hearts, and we don't know what to do because this keeps happening. When I was in New York, this happened to a man who's just selling cigarettes, and to sit there and watch this cop literally squeeze the life out of George Floyd. Horrific is I guess the word I would use. It was a nightmare to see this happen. Darkness and trauma are a place that I'm used to being. I kind of, with my mental health, kind of always feel like I'm living in that zone. But, you know, it was just horrific to see that, and to see people begging the officer to remove his knee. And that his rage, maybe his prejudice, his training, his pride or something would not allow him to listen to the humanity of others. Obviously, he knew he was being filmed, and that didn't do anything. That didn't hold any accountability to that police officer or any of those police officers. No one intervened. People tried to intervene, but what do you do when all the men have guns and there's nothing you can do? So I think the reaction to what has happened is an honest gut reaction. And I'm grateful that the officer was arrested and then they pushed that through. So, you know, I guess that's where I start there. But this country has, and racism of this, the racism in this country, you know, and the socioeconomic issues in this country are horrible. And I don't think we understand that this is how, you know, our society is set up in this way, where, you know, we're sorry folks, it's a tough day. I'm lost for words today. But capitalism doesn't always work for the bottom few. And there's a lot of fear, unfortunately, put on those who live in poverty, and especially if you are a person of color. And a lot of animosity and anger and hurt, and you know, a lot of resentment, and a lot of people who have these thoughts of, well, you wouldn't be in this position if you were A, B, or C, or if you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, not realizing the history that our society has with disenfranchising people of color and people who are poor. And so we have a hell of a job ahead of us. I took notes, so I'm going to try to look at my notes so I don't just sit here and babble on to you guys. You know, where do we go from here, and what are the answers? There's been horrible rioting. I mean, I watched my neighborhood go down in flames, the post office, which was tough because it was strange to watch, you know, a bunch of white kids break into the post office originally, and, you know, them not realizing that the repercussions that it would have on the community of color. And seeing that was just, I mean, the insensitivity there, you know, I mean, you know, they're angry, and they may be angry about things as well, but not realizing, seeing people not realize that their actions are going to cause a reaction that probably won't even be put towards them. I mean, just things like the bank and the local grocery store and the Target, and living in a low income area and knowing that those things are now gone, and my community doesn't have those things anymore. But also understanding the response of the community and the horror of, you know, seeing someone murdered in front of you, and the government not being able to do anything about it. And, you know, I was thinking about, I was talking to Pete, as always, but, you know, how people and officers in the UK are held to a higher standard. And, you know, it's harder for our officers here to be prosecuted, because they have unions and people protecting them and lawyers, and because their job is so hard, we kind of, you know, give them a little bit more of an area, gray area for them. And me wondering is that maybe this is something that needs to be changed. but that's more difficult than just saying it. So let's not just, it's very easy for me to say that, but we have to look that we have a long, 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 long road ahead of us. But I'm angry. I'm mad as hell for George Floyd and his family and his loved ones. I'm angry at the officers for their lack of humanity and empathy. And I'm just sad that the effect that this is going to have on the folks in my neighborhood. I mean, I've got a car. I can drive a little further to, go the other way uptown and still take care of myself. But a lot of those folks won't be able to do that. I think we need to think about, where do we go from here? What are some answers? And how do we respond as individuals and as a community? And the thing is, being in the thick of it, it's hard for me to realize. This is happening in LA, Atlanta, two cities I've lived in. Atlanta is a home to me, in Brooklyn, and in New York and Manhattan, other cities I love, countless cities. But being here in the middle of it right now, it's hard to focus on what's happening all over the place, because you're just in the thick of things. And today I was trying to step back a little bit and see what was going on. And my sister kept checking up on me and was kind of updating me on what was happening in some of the other cities. There's some great people to hear. If you haven't heard Killer Mike, the rapper, give his talk, he gave a media conference in Atlanta. That is really, really worth finding online. Cornel West gave a great interview with Anderson Cooper. That's also a really great place to go and listen. I think we really need to be listening to people who are leaders in the community, and people of color who are leaders in the community, and hear their voice and hear what they're saying, and listen and find a way we can be proactive. But I don't think there's going to be a silver bullet answer. Our anger really can lead to good action. I think our anger can lead to good action, but it can also be led to manipulate people. And so I think we have to be careful that our anger does not manipulate us and does not allow us to take the lower road to divide us further. I'm always talking about grace. I'm always talking about forgiveness. I'm always talking about love. And it's this time. It is this time that we are in, is where those concepts become actions and words and thoughts, and require deep thinking and deep conviction for us to make a change, if we want to see change. So yes, be angry. Yes, let your voice be heard, but realize that there's more than that to it. Let's not let the powers that be divide us. Let's not let politicians divide us. Let's not let politics divide us. We're seeing a great injustice, and I think we can come together and agree that a man does not deserve to be murdered. Of course, I thought we could come together over children being locked in cages as well, and we seem to move on from that pretty fast. And I hope this is something that we will not move on from. But in order for us to not move on, we have to surrender our short attention span that social media and the television and the media itself continues to perpetuate. And even our own president, says something, and then we all focus on that. I don't have the answers. I'm in the middle of this thing, and I've contacted some of my friends. I talked to Pastor Lawrence and just asked him, to guide me in this and what I could do. And right now I'm just trying to be a friend and loving and a voice of compassion, but at the same time making it clear what's happening and allowing people to see what's happening here in Minneapolis and uptown, basically on Lake Street where I live. Propagandists have always known that horrible events can be used to manipulate people, and we have to be careful of propaganda. White supremacists are using this to benefit them. More leftist groups are using this to benefit them, benefit their cause. The president has honestly said some horribly insensitive things that really anger me. But honestly, I don't think he speaks for everyone. I don't think he speaks for I know he doesn't speak for every conservative. A lot of my conservative friends are often the people who reach out to me first, to be honest with you. And we talk about these things and weep over these things together. So I'm not going to play that game by any means. I just want to encourage everyone not to be manipulated through this, not to let propaganda manipulate you through this, not to react in such a way where we just jump, but where we're able to sit with our anger and figure out how to breathe, how to let these thoughts go through our head, how to deal with our action and not react right away, but how can we react in a way that will change things. Yesterday I was online and, I saw one of my colleagues be like, if we all just go in November and vote Trump out, this will make everything will get better, or start to get better. And I've lived long enough in this country to know that I have not seen a president who has eradicated racism. It might help, yeah, but I think we have to be careful not to think like, well, we'll just let them do it. All I got to do is go into a booth and go, and that'll take care of it. Yeah, we've got to go into booths, but we also have to do things rather than just thinking about the president. We have to think about people on the local level as well, and really research these folks to see, who is really open to police reform, who is really open to treating the community with humanity. And that's not always amongst party lines. I've learned that in the past from people I voted for and realized that, I voted for a very intolerant Democrat. And maybe should have rethought that. And that was tough. I remember the stop and frisk when I was living in New York, and things like that. And I've just seen this, racism is something that we all have to come together and confront this and acknowledge the parts that we play in it, as well as be intolerant of it. So when I talk about thinking hard and thinking different and really challenging yourself to think differently, this is that time. And we must start at our community. And I think finding ways to work with our local police and nationally to call for reform, I think is an important place to start. We all, thank God, have different parts to play, and we all have different convictions. But what I hope is we can take those convictions and use them in such a progressive way, in such a deep way, that we can start to find the sources of where our convictions lie and the underlining, what is the foundation here, and who do we need to reach out to make these things change. But I think we definitely have to reform the police. I think it's something we have to do, but I think that comes through working with the community, working with community leaders, working with our local state politicians and city politicians, and figuring out ways to communicate. And so I've already been thinking about that. That's why I reached out to Pastor Lawrence, and and we're going to wait for this to kind of blow over a little bit, but have that conversation of how can we start meeting with people? How can we start to do the hard work? Yes, protesting is important. Civil disobedience is very important, and it makes a huge change. But then we have to have leaders who are willing to go in and have these hard conversations, and talk about things like better training, background checks, maybe even things like dialectic behavioral therapy taught to these officers, so they're able to take their anger and control their anger and put it into a different place, and to do the opposite action of what they might think. They think fight or flight, and maybe find that place in the middle. But that comes through a lot of hard work and a lot of training and a lot of hard conversations. So I just don't think we can have this. There's just not a silver bullet, and I wish there was. And I wish I could come here and give you some inspirational speech today and say, let's fight the system and do all that. But I want to fight the system, but we have to go to the system. We have to be willing to have the hard conversations. We have to be willing to put in the hard work. This is not easy to do. This is not something that happens overnight. And this is something that if we allow ourselves to just become numb to it and move on and just be like, well, we protested and we did what we could, now let's move on. That's not all we can do. One of the things that Killer Mike was saying is that, we've got to, beat up the politicians at the polls. Yes. But we've also got to figure out ways to, how do we call our representatives? How do we have meetings with our representatives? And I've been lucky enough in my work to be able to sit down with politicians and to sit down with community leaders and have these hard conversations. But it requires taking time, going to these places, building relationships, and earning their trust to a point where you're able to sit down and have these conversations. But that's me. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying that this is how we do it. I'm saying that this is why I hope we could do it. This is the way I hope we can, Revolution can do it here. And I have not been extremely focused on the community in Minneapolis as much as I should. I've been really focused on my work, but if I'm going to put my boots on the ground and get involved, I want to get involved with having these conversations, talking to the community, and seeing ways to change us. Even if it's sitting down with individual officers and just, trying to talk about empathy and what empathy looks like, and what empathy looks like in the moment of when we lose our anger and when we lose our tempers and when we're scared and we're afraid, and how do we react with compassion in those moments of fear. I used to have an awful temper. And it took me a lot of therapy and a lot of things to change that, and not constantly react and not let that temper fly off and not hurt others around me and not put others in danger around me. And there was a time where I did put people in danger because of my temper, because if you hurt somebody I loved, I was just off to the races. Let's fight, let's get into each other's faces, and I had to learn to step back. And sometimes walk away and come back later, or to learn how to calm down and have a conversation and explain, this is why I'm angry, this is why you're overstepping your boundaries. Anyway, I'm not going to have a ton for you today because honestly I'm tired, I haven't been sleeping, and I'm worried about the country. I'm worried about my community. I'm worried about my brothers and sisters of color. I live in my apartment complex is majority Somalian, and I love my Somali brothers and sisters. They're an amazing part of Minneapolis and this community. There's a huge community of Somalians here. You know, and I know that they're discriminated against. You know, I was robbed a few months ago, you know, and the first thing the cops were, you know, near my house, and they were asking, you know, were they Somalians? And I'm like, no, they weren't Somalians, you know. And it's just strange. Here was the night that George Floyd was life was taken. I was driving home very late at night and got pulled over by a police officer. And he stopped me and he's like, do you know you like sped through town? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was a speed limit. He's like, well, you passed 3 speed limit signs. And I was like, honestly, I didn't see him, you know, my bad, you know, just, you know, I'll take the ticket, you know, whatever. And he's like, oh, well, honesty is really important to me. So I'll let you go, you know, no big deal, you know, and that was probably part of me being white and privileged and in the area that I was in. You know, that I mean, I should have gotten a speeding ticket if I passed 3 signs of speed limit signs. Just, you know, and I'm just like a bat out of hell, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really a fast driver, but I'm all over the place today. So for you, those who's sticking with me right now, I appreciate it. I'm just in pain, just like the rest of the country, and I want us to be able to do better. So a call to reform, a call to change, protesting, letting your voice being heard, social media posts are great, but it will not be enough. Hard work of reform will be needed. Like I said, no moving to the next hot topic. A lot will be demanded of us if we truly want to be a part of justice. It's one thing to demand justice. It's another thing to be a cog in the machine that helps bring justice. So that's with hard work. You know, how do I meet with, you know, I can hear people going, well, how do I do that? How do I meet with those people? How will they listen to me? And, you know, there's community organizations that are doing this. You know, there are community organizations that are meeting together and doing this. You know, we can join part of that. You know, as a pastor who's been a minister in Bryant Lake Bowl for, you know, 6 or 7 years in the community, you know, I'm lucky enough to be able to be with other pastors and meet with community leaders and politicians and have these conversations. And so I'm going to try to do my part as well and have these conversations. It's just requires tough work. And this isn't pull yourself up by your bootstraps work. It's just saying if we want to see change, we have to be a part of that change. We have to be cogs in the machine, and everybody will play different parts, you know. Yes, we need social unrest. Yes, we need protests. Yeah, I mean, those civil I mean, it's important. It was a huge part of King's work. But another big part of King's work was sitting down with his enemies, literally people who wanted to kill him and eventually did, sitting with them and having the hard conversations and going to the highest form of government to say, we have got to make a change. You know, right now there needs to be laws. Officers need to be held accountable to how they treat others. You know, and often when I've talked about LGBTQ plus rights, you know, people say, well, how do I work with someone who does not recognize my humanity? And today I will tell you, it's time to find out. That's how I feel. It's time to find out. If we want to be, we want to see change, this might be the time for us to find out, how do we meet with those who do not recognize our humanity? My heroes, my theological heroes, my social justice heroes are human beings whose humanity was not recognized, and still to this day, some of their humanity is not recognized. Who confronted the injustice forward, straight on, and lost their lives because they were willing to go to places where their humanity was not recognized. But their work has created an atmosphere for us to continue to work, and they have given us great strategies, great maps, roadmaps on how to do this work and how to make change. It's just so easy for us to get distracted with easy answers. And from what I've realized from philosophy and theology and nonviolence, even anarchy, because everybody's saying, oh, these anarchists are everywhere. Well, when you understand anarchy, you realize, well, these aren't anarchists. People don't realize is that the circle at the A in is actually an O that stands for order, So it's like their idea of anarchist is like, the Sex Pistols. Like, that must be anarchy, spray paint. I saw anarchy symbols spray painted through town, and I'm just like, that's a more severe idea of anarchy. It's like saying like all like white nationalists or that's what conservatives are, right. Oh, the conservatives are out, it would be like summing them up like that. But you know how I had to find that out? Through reading a long, boring book about the subject, through putting in the hard work, and through thinking critically. And last night I reached out to a reporter who kept anarchist. And I just said, you really need to inform yourself on what anarchists are and what anarchy actually is before you throw this word around on the news as just, they're all this one type of people, Because for some reason in this country, we just think, oh, though there's black and there's white and there's right and there's left and there's conservative and there's, and if they're not part of this, they're not part of the social makeup of this country. But this country is very different. It's why it's really hard for me for some of my progressive friends who are like, if you just vote this way and just think this way. And I'm like, but what about of us who are disillusioned with the whole system? You're telling me I have to join the system to change the system, but I'm saying I feel like I'm not a part of the system. And how do I operate outside of that? How do I come in and say, well, the system has to change. I want to change the system. And I'm glad that there's a lot of you within that system helping change us. But there's some of us outside of the system who just doesn't feel like either side represents who we are or what we do. I mean, it reminds me of the Public Enemy song, By the Time I Get to Arizona, where he says, I'm not represented neither by the jackass or the elephant. So there aren't easy answers, but communicating with each other and learning to communicate with those in leadership. Yes, and voting and doing certain things like that are important. But some of us don't want to vote because we don't feel like we're a part of the system, too. So, I mean, it's very complicated. It's just not... It really is. It's so complex. So, really what I think a lot of people want now are really inspiring talks and hearing things of hope. And I'm just saying, like, we can be hopeful, but unless we decide to really put our feet on the ground... and put our voices to other people's ears, just having people sign petitions and things like that are helpful, but that takes a second. And this is something that's going to take a lot of work. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I don't know if we'll ever get rid of, I don't think we'll ever be rid of racism completely. I don't think we'll ever be rid of legalism. I don't think we'll ever be rid of people who are hateful and who are victims of misinformation. But how can we at least look at people like the police in all our communities and say, how do we make sure that these folks aren't victims of misinformation when they come in as officers and when they're serving the community? How do we get in there and make sure that people who are white supremacists are not allowed to join the force? Is that through testing? Is that through sensitivity training? Is that through therapeutic ways? There's many ways to do this. It's just sitting down and going like, what is possible? And it might even be something like paying officers more, but also holding them to a different level. Okay, we're not going to solve that today, but these are things like I just want you to think about. I just want you to sit back and think. I want you to listen to this and go like, oh, there's hard work there. I mean, I just think that's why Jesus talks about taking up your cross and dying to yourself and being patient and different things like that, is because that's what was required to do hard work. I mean, I'm not sitting here because I read the Bible for face value. You know, none of the hard decisions I've ever made where I've come out and made huge stands for people in communities came from me just going like, and it should have been just like, this is the right thing to do. But you know, it came from studying and understanding. Now the Bible doesn't rule my life like it used to, but you know, it came from really hard work. You know, I had somebody the other day. It's like, well, the Bible is just a text, and so the text is misinterpreted. And I said, yeah, because it's not read within its context, and you have to look deeper, and you have to look at Greek, and you have to look at Hebrew, and you have to understand what are 2,000-year-old Middle Eastern customs. You know, it requires hard work. And then looking at philosophy and trying to read books that I can barely get my brain in, and then Pete being like, oh, well, you've got to read that book first and not understand it, and then go back and try to read it again, and then maybe you'll get something out of it. And I'm going like, I don't want to do that. That's hard. But I am so grateful for the time when I do put in the hard work to build relationships, to build friendships, to studying, to making change. I always feel like I come to a better conclusion the more educated I am, the more understanding I have. And that's what I hope that we can kind of start to find through this stuff, is really doing hard work. We will have to struggle to not surrender to victimhood. I think that a lot of the powers that be love that. They want us to think that we're victims and that we have to be victims. And I think we can be victims that become victors, to sound like a preacher, but that we can, you know, a lot of times the people who change things are victims of violence, or victims of rape, or victims of child abuse, or victims of, you know, most of the people that I work with recovery are all recovering alcoholics. You know, I mean, they're victims. They're people who've been there and done it and gone through it. And so how do we don't allow to just hold on to the saying like, well, you've hurt me. And, you know, how do we know, well, you've hurt me, and you know what? We're not going to let you hurt anybody else. So we must work hard to help others recognize our shared humanity. That's what we've always tried to do at Revolution, and we'll continue to do that work. But it is hard work. And it's not, you don't get rich doing that, unfortunately. But we can't change history or our long legacy of brutality and racism and sexism and heterosexism and things like that with just a sign or social media. You know, conversation will need to be had, working to influence and change the powers that be, organizing and finding ways to talk with those in power. I'm reading my notes. We will need to work with them to truly influence change. And this is not an easy task. And I'll end with this, and then we can maybe do a little back and forth, or just talk about comments, whatever. I don't know. But MLK knew this deeper meaning that was required of hard work and looking deeper. And he lost his popularity because he decided to fight the disease rather than the symptoms that we could all see. And obviously the symptoms are obvious, sometimes the most obvious things, and we fight these symptoms and we go after the symptoms. But it seemed like King realized that, you know, we've got a problem with capitalism. We've got a problem with the inequality of wealth in this country, you know, workers' rights and different things like that. And so he started to really hit some of those things really hard. And from what I've studied and from even from his own daughter, is that, you know, when he was assassinated, he was at his most unpopular. And now we celebrate King, and we talk about how great he is and how wonderful he is, and we use him, and everybody uses him almost like the Bible. You know, we cherry pick him and go, oh, he was this and this and this. I mean, he was an amazing human being, and that really does speak of his influence. But, you know, remembering that he was unpopular because he knew that there was that he had to go down deeper, and he started to work for the garbage workers' rights, and everybody thought he lost his focus. And what I think was his focus actually just got tighter, and realizing there was another problem that had to be confronted as well. He confronted the war in Vietnam. He confronted these things, and people started to get upset because he started to realize, he started to go like, there's an issue here, there's issues here, issues here. And the white community was afraid of him and turned on him. And even his own community did not support him as much when he was killed, unfortunately. So, what I'm saying is this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't like I'm going to sell 1,000 books if I do this. My podcast isn't going to be the hottest thing in the world if I talk about doing hard work. If I talk to you about the easy things, and oh yeah, I'll just do this, and I get 1,000 likes. If I say, oh yeah, it's you're going to have to go back to school and spend 3 years doing this, and you're going to have to do this, or you're going to have to put on a suit, or you're going to have to do, it becomes like, oh, I don't want to do any of that stuff. But the people who've influenced me, those are the people who spent so much time putting in hard work that none of us see. So this is it's not the way to popularity, but it is the way to change. And I hope we'll look at it and see that. And I think there's a lot of great people doing that work. I see that a lot in Atlanta. I'll see it a lot here in Minneapolis. Is a lot of my friends who are the unsung heroes of this city. Yesterday I asked people to follow Pastor Larry, Pastor Lawrence. Sorry, he's Larry something up on his Instagram, but Pastor Lawrence, and it was funny to see like it just wasn't that popular of a thing. We were like, oh, that's fine, everything else, oh, pictures, I like those, but following this pastor might, I don't know how awesome that is, and it's honestly really awesome because he's one of the unsung heroes of our community. And I've realized that I've got to spend more time under his leadership so I can grow and become a better leader in my own community. Obviously, my community, literally my front door, outside my front door, was affected this week. And I need to figure out what I can do in this very divided city. And I happen to be in the right place. I feel like that, the right place and surrounded by the right people. And so it's time for me to look to them and say, here I am, white male with, what do I do? What can I do? What can I do to help changes? Who can we meet with? Who can we talk to make your life and to make this world better, to help you live well and not have to be afraid of calling the police. All right, so we're going to let you guys, and Charlotte has been going through it too. I just saw that. So, yeah. Feeling very hopeless right now, folks. So, Caleb, do we have anything?
Yeah, we got a lot of really insightful feedback. People saying that they're also experiencing it in their cities. James says, this is what happens when governments and establishments deny basic human rights and those who are in power are not checked. We have a president who doesn't... Oh, that's your nephew.
Yeah.
We have a president who does not care about either. This is way deeper than politics, says Fred. Anger needs to be constructive, not destructive, says Robert. It's crazy out there in Portland, Christopher says. Zoe points out voting out Trump will not fix this problem. Robert says somebody was shot here in Erie, Pennsylvania last night. And then Zoe also points out that Joe Biden created the conditions to incarcerate thousands of black people, and repeating that it's not a party line
right
thing. Michael says we must force changes within the entire system. This country was built on slavery. In different ways, it has never gone away. The way we treat each other, stand up when wrong is being done around us, changing laws and our leaders, we can no longer allow inequality to be acceptable.
Yeah. And maybe some of us should actually start running for office as well. I'd like to see some people that I can relate to. I honestly was impressed with our mayor, who, and a lot of people did not like this, and this is not a popular stance necessarily, but who surrendered the 3rd precinct, who had the police leave the 3rd precinct.
Oh, wow.
And did not do anything. But the reason I liked that is because it seemed to be the thing that was going to cause the least casualties. And it was a nonviolent move. And he said people and human beings are more important than brick and mortar. And then there were other people saying, well, no, it's the significance, it's the imagery, it's the sign, it's a beacon. We can't have that, and who gives a damn about a beacon? This is about human life, and having a mayor who realized that human life was more important than a building. As sad as I am to see that gone and to see that services will suffer in that area, I was really grateful to see a leader who gave a damn enough about human life, and wasn't like we have to have an this example of power. It's like, no, let's let humans live and then figure out what to do from there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, yeah. This whole thing is just so huge and so overwhelming, and to try to look at what is affecting what, to look at like the little tiny moving parts and say, oh, well, this is causing this, and then people, are reacting to this, and it's just overwhelming to try to see the whole picture at once.
Oh yeah.
Thomas says we also have to recognize that racism happens daily in millions of ways, of smaller ways, and in order to keep change, we also need to keep focus. We need to also focus on smaller incremental change.
Yeah.
Good point. Our friend Angel says, long haul, get rid of the police state. Its only purpose is perpetuating the status quo. That's why I understand and echo, fuck the police. Police reform is a concrete first step, but it should not be the end. We got lots of really good.
Well, I mean, by looking at some of even just like how, like I said before, how England and Northern Ireland have their police force set up.
Yeah, Ray actually says something about that. Ray's one of our congregation members in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And said, in Northern Ireland, we have a committee called the Policing Board to hold police to account. It's born out of the troubles and mistrust of the police sections of the community. Something like this should become the standard.
It should be the standard, and I think we could learn so much from Northern Ireland. Their peace process, the Good Friday Agreement, was mind-boggling and amazing that they were able to do it, and realizing that these folks did not live through 3 or 4 or 5 days of what we're going through right now, but they lived through years and years of this. Years and years of this social unrest, of people killing each other, blowing up buildings, constant war, and they found a way to find peace and from this dualistic system. And I think we could learn a lot from that community, and I hope people don't continue to brush that history of the troubles under the carpet, because we definitely could learn a lot. I actually last night started reading the peace process, the Good Friday Agreement last night, to just kind of grasp an idea of what can we take from this as a community, and having the police be overseen by a group is pretty amazing, and the fact that a lot of them don't even carry guns, but America's not going to let that happen.
Yeah, I know. That's a weird thing. That's a oddly touchy subject. We've got lots and lots of good comments. Maybe this might be a good one to kind of move towards wrapping up. I can echo this sentiment for sure. Ruthie says, my depression and anxiety have been at an all-time high since Tuesday. Thank you, Jay, for me to be able to watch you every Sunday. I can tell that you are having a hard time today, and I feel the same way. I thank you for giving me other ways to look at things that are going on. I'm having a hard time with my mental illness as well. Thank you for giving me comfort in these trying times. And I agree with her as well, Jay.
Yeah, and you're kind of having a mental struggle right now.
I'm having a hard time.
You know?
I've been crying a lot. Just like laying around. I've been sad. But yeah, there's just a lot. This is an overwhelming situation.
It is. Yeah, I found myself yesterday, I got this quiet moment by myself, and I felt just like this sobbing feeling come over me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It was just like, oh.
Uh-huh. I was at work yesterday, sitting behind the counter, like ringing people up, and then once the restaurant cleared, I just like started just weeping, and then I just like cleared myself up, and then people kept coming. So I just like got real quick, like okay, I've got a window to emotionally purge real quick. Zoe asks, "How's your health today, Jay? How's your dad's health also?"
Well, I mean, my dad has had a small stroke. They got the blood clot. He's been in bed for 2 weeks, which I know has been driving him insane. I have been sending him lots of pictures of my kids, which I know he loves. That's nice.
That's nice.
You know, I'll get a little text, "Love you, Dad." So hopefully that's him being able to text him back. It might be his wife being texting back on his behalf. I don't know yet. I'll probably try to call him tomorrow so he can talk to the kids.
That's
I have
sweet.
the kids tomorrow, so.
That's nice. Cool. I think, a lot of people are heading out now, but lots of love is coming towards us from all over the place, and everyone's feeling this. Definitely everyone's being affected in different ways right now and reacting in different ways. And
well, thanks everyone for tuning in today. It's a tough time. Stay strong. Find ways to encourage each other, you know. Online right now, if grace is what we teach here, so maybe just look at ways and just say, am I scapegoating? Am I practicing propaganda? Ask yourself these questions as we communicate with others. With COVID, obviously we're not out and about, so most of our interaction is online, but just look at those things and how can we be compassionate? How can we help our communities? And
that's such a weird
who can we reach
setup.
out to?
That's such a weird setup, the whole COVID thing. Like, we're completely isolated, and then all of a sudden we're thrown into this unrest. It's insane. It's overwhelming.
So who knows what the future holds? The 2020 has been a dumpster fire, and I have a feeling we're in for a lot more. But as long as we're able to be here online, we will. And we love you guys, and we thank you for your support. And I'm glad to saw that both my nephews, James and Jonathan, were on here today. Thanks, guys. It's always good to see you. And we'll just keep the conversation going. Love you so much. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
We'd like to remind you that our ministry is supported 100% by listeners like you. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.
If you like that, you might enjoy the Loosen the Bible Belt podcast with Jay Bakker and me, Kristen Becker. Hey everybody, Kristen here. A lot of my friends have been asking me, hey, how do we support the podcast? And it's real simple. Head on over to patreon.com/Loosen the Bible Belt. It's just a couple bucks a month, and you get a ton of new bonus content coming out every week. I hope that everybody is held accountable. I hope that there's an entirely new future force that comes out of this, or none at all. Truthfully, like, I'm almost to the point where, fine, just give us all a minute so we can all get our guns. Like, fine, you don't want to have police. And, people talk about Obama, like, oh, Obama was going to change everything. Well, he didn't really, because once you get put into a machine that's working that much, there's only so much you can do and still remain inside the machine.
Yeah.
That's just the truth of it. So the machine has to be broken.
That was a post-Christian podcast.